Have you ever had that feeling where you think you've completely nailed a topic, like you're an expert, only to find out you've barely scratched the surface? Well, today we're going to talk about that exact thing. It's a fascinating and maybe a little unsettling cognitive glitch, the illusion of mastery. Let's just dive right in with a question I think we've all asked ourselves at some point. Why is it that the loudest people in the room so often seem to have the least to say? You know who I'm talking about. It's a super common experience, right? But it's not just some social annoyance. It actually points to something way, way deeper about how our minds work. And it turns out psychology has a name for this. And honestly, when you understand what it is, you start to see this fundamental glitch in how our brains process competence, especially our own. So let's start right there. Let's unpack this common social puzzle. Who is this loudest person in the room? And what makes them tick? I mean, think about it. You've definitely seen this. Maybe it's at a family dinner or a meeting at work or just scrolling through comments online. There's always someone talking with this unshakable conviction, this absolute certainty about a subject they clearly haven't spent more than 5 minutes thinking about. It's confusing, it's frustrating, and it happens all the time. But here's the thing. This isn't just a personality quirk. Nope. It is a well-documented cognitive bias. So let's get into the science behind this mental glitch, which is known as the Dunning-Kruger Effect. So there it is, the Dunning-Kruger Effect. And what it means is pretty simple. It's a cognitive bias where a person's lack of skill in one area actually stops them from being able to see how unskilled they are. It's kind of wild. In a way, they are just too incompetent to even recognize their own incompetence. To put it even more bluntly, a little bit of knowledge can be a really dangerous thing. It creates this powerful illusion of expertise. The person who's at the very, very beginning of their learning journey is often the most likely one to be confidently shouting that they've already reached the finish line. But why? Why does this even happen? Well, the answer lies in our ability or, our inability to think about our own thinking. Let's pull back the curtain on the hidden mechanics behind all this misplaced confidence. Okay, the key concept we have to understand here is metacognition. It sounds like a fancy word, but it's for something really fundamental. It's your ability to step back and look at your own knowledge, to evaluate your own thought process. It's that little voice in an expert's head that's always whispering, wait a second, am I sure about this? What might I be missing? For some people, that voice is just completely silent. And this leads to what researchers call the double curse. It's a 1-2 punch. First, their lack of skill causes them to make mistakes. Okay, that's the obvious part. But second, and this is the really crucial bit, that very same lack of skill robs them of the self-awareness to even see that they're making mistakes. It's like trying to grade your own test when you don't even know the subject matter. You wouldn't know where to even begin. Now, this problem often gets supercharged by something else, called cognitive rigidity. This is just a tendency to see the world in really simple black and white terms. No gray areas, no nuance. And when a topic seems simple, it's way easier to feel like you've completely mastered it, right? True experts, they see all the complexity, all the shades of gray. But for the overconfident, the world is just a bunch of easy answers. But here's the twist, and this is where it gets really interesting. The Dunning-Kruger effect, it's not just about low performers. It actually impacts genuine experts too, just in the complete opposite way. This is what's known as the expert's paradox. So let's look at the two sides of this coin. You've got the less skilled who grossly overestimate their ability because to them, the subject just seems simple. But then you have the highly skilled, and they often slightly underestimate their own ability. Why? Because a task feels easy to them, so they just assume it must be easy for everyone else. It's a perfect illustration of that old saying, the more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know. So, knowing all this, what do we do about it? How do we avoid falling into this trap ourselves? How do we escape the illusion? Well, the good news is we can. It's all about actively, consciously working to keep our own minds in check. The antidote is something called cognitive humility. And what that means is you have to always remain a student. It means you've got to actively look for constructive feedback, especially from people who see things differently than you do. And here's a huge takeaway. That feeling of absolute certainty, that should be a red flag. Treat it as a warning sign. It's a trigger to just pause and question your own assumptions. Learning to say, I don't know, isn't a weakness. It's actually the foundation of real wisdom. And that really brings us to the ultimate paradox, right? The central challenge of this whole thing. If the very nature of this bias is that you can't see it in yourself, how do you know it isn't affecting you right now? It's definitely something to think about.